She didn't even read it. She just signed. The pen barely touched the paper before she slid it back across the table, stood up, and walked out of that conference room without looking back. No tears, no argument. Just silence and the quiet click of her heels on the marble floor. Everyone in that room assumed she had lost. Her attorney looked pale. The opposing counsel was already hiding a smile, and Marcus Hargrove, the man she had been married to for 11 years, sat perfectly still with his hands folded like he had just won something. He had, or so he thought. What nobody in that room knew, not even her closest friend, not her own sister, was that Elena Hargrove had not signed that divorce paper out of defeat. She had signed it because she already knew something that nobody else in that building had figured out yet. And within 48 hours, every single person who watched her walk out of that room would be scrambling to understand how a woman who supposedly lost everything had just inherited the most powerful privately held company in the state. This is the kind of story that makes you question what you think you know about power, about marriage, and about what it really means to be underestimated. And if what you just heard already has you leaning forward, stay with me, because what comes next is genuinely hard to believe. If you want more stories like this one, stories where nothing is what it first appears to be, hit subscribe right now and stay close because this one gets much deeper before it gets clearer. Let's talk about Elena first, because understanding her is the only way any of what follows makes sense. She grew up in a mid-sized city in Ohio, the daughter of a woman who worked double shifts at a hospital laundry and a father who left before Elena started kindergarten. Not a tragic backstory in the dramatic sense, but the kind of quiet hardship that either breaks a person down completely or teaches them early that the only currency worth holding is knowledge. Elena chose knowledge. She graduated top of her class at a state university, got a partial scholarship to law school, and then made a choice that surprised everyone who knew her. She turned down 3 law firm offers and instead took a junior administrative position at a mid-level logistics company called Hargrove Distribution. People thought she was throwing her career away. She thought she was making an investment. Within 2 years, she was running compliance for the entire Eastern Division. Within 4, she was the operational backbone of a company that was quietly becoming something much bigger than its name suggested. And somewhere inside those long hours and late-night spreadsheets and strategy sessions that bled into weekends, she fell in love with the man whose name was on the building. Marcus Hargrove was not a bad man when she married him. That matters. This is not a story about a villain. It is a story about a man who let success convince him that the people closest to him were furniture. Useful, present, but not particularly worth consulting when you rearrange the room. He was brilliant in the way that certain entrepreneurs are brilliant. Instinctive, fast-moving, charismatic in a boardroom, and emotionally absent everywhere else. Elena understood this about him. She accepted it for longer than she should have because she believed, genuinely believed, that what they were building together was a shared thing. It was not. By year 8 of their marriage, Marcus had begun the slow process of restructuring the company in ways that Elena was no longer being looped into. Meetings she used to sit in were suddenly scheduled when she was traveling. Documents she used to review were handled by a new corporate attorney she had never met. And then, 18 months before that divorce paper appeared, Marcus quietly transferred his majority stake in Hargrove Distribution into a holding trust, or so his legal team believed they had done. Here is where it gets complicated. And this is the part that even seasoned corporate attorneys missed when they first looked at the paperwork. The holding trust that Marcus's team established in his name had a beneficiary clause. Standard language, the kind that gets drafted in boilerplate and rubber-stamped without anyone reading it too carefully. But inside that clause, buried in subsection 4 of a 40-page trust document, was language that his attorneys had recycled from an older estate template, language that named his lawful spouse as co-beneficiary in the event of dissolution of the marriage, provided the dissolution occurred before a formal amendment to the trust had been filed and recorded. No amendment had been filed. No amendment had been recorded. Elena knew this because she had spent 3 months reading every document Marcus had ever signed since the company was founded. Not because she was planning something, not because she was calculating a revenge strategy. She knew it because after she first suspected the marriage was ending, she did what lawyers do. She went back to the paper trail. And buried in that paper trail was a mistake. A genuine, catastrophic, no-one-noticed mistake made by a team of attorneys who were moving too fast and trusting old templates. When Marcus handed her those divorce papers, he genuinely believed he was walking away with everything. He believed the trust protected him. He believed the company was his, locked away, untouchable. And when Elena signed those papers without negotiating, without fighting, without even asking for a settlement conference, he was so relieved he didn't stop to wonder why. That is the thing about being underestimated for long enough. People stop watching you. She had one attorney she trusted completely. A woman named Diane Torres, who had never worked for Hargrove Distribution, who had no conflict of interest, and who Elena had quietly retained 6 months before the divorce proceedings started. While Marcus's legal team was congratulating themselves on a clean split, Diane was filing a claim with the trust administrator citing the beneficiary clause. And because the trust had been created under state law that had very specific recordation requirements, and because no amendment had been recorded before the date of dissolution, Elena's claim was not just valid, it was airtight. The day Marcus found out, he was in a meeting with 3 potential investors from out of state. His assistant knocked, which she never did during meetings, and slid a folded note across the table to him. He read it once. Then he read it again. Then he excused himself from the room very calmly, walked into his private office, and sat down without turning on the lights. She had not stolen anything. She had not manipulated anything. She had found a mistake, a real, documented, legally consequential mistake, and she had let the law do what it was designed to do. This is the part of the story that the Shadowlight Stories audience tends to sit with the longest, because it raises a question that has nothing to do with law and everything to do with human psychology. Why do powerful people consistently underestimate the people closest to them? Marcus had worked alongside Elena for years. He had seen her read contracts faster than his senior partners. He had watched her untangle operational problems that stumped people twice her experience. And yet the moment their personal relationship began to deteriorate, he filed her under the category of someone he needed to manage and move past, not someone he needed to respect as an equal. That cognitive blind spot, the one where we start seeing a person through the lens of the role we have assigned them rather than who they actually are, is not unique to Marcus. It shows up in boardrooms and courtrooms and kitchen tables all over the country. We see someone long enough in one role and we stop being able to imagine them in any other. Elena understood this, and she used it. Not maliciously, but strategically. The legal resolution took 14 months. It was not quick, and it was not clean. Marcus's team challenged the claim at every step, brought in specialists, argued the intent of the original trust language, petitioned for an emergency amendment to be backdated. None of it worked. The court ruled in Elena's favor. She became the majority beneficiary of a trust that held 54% of Hargrove Distribution, which had a valuation at that time of just under $280 million. She did not sell. She did not dissolve the company. She called a board meeting, introduced herself to the people who had been quietly excluding her from their circle for years, and then did something none of them expected. She promoted Diane Torres to Chief Legal Officer. She restructured the executive team, and she kept the name on the building exactly as it was, Hargrove Distribution, because she said, in the only public interview she ever gave about it, that the name reminded her of something important. It reminded her to never stop reading the fine print. There is a version of this story that gets told as a revenge fantasy, a satisfying tale of a scorned woman getting everything she deserved. But that framing cheapens it. What Elena actually did was something far less dramatic and far more instructive. She did not outwit Marcus with some brilliant scheme. She simply stayed in the habit of paying attention at a time when everyone around her had stopped. She stayed curious when she had every reason to be angry. She stayed methodical when emotions would have been understandable. The twist, the real one, is not that she got the company. The real twist is that she had been building the knowledge to find that mistake for 11 years without knowing she was doing it. She read documents because she was thorough. She understood the legal structure of the trust because she cared about the business. She retained an independent attorney because she was careful, not because she had a plan. The inheritance, the legal claim, the victory, all of it was the product of habits she had built long before she ever needed them. That is the part worth carrying with you, not the dramatic ending, not the courtroom resolution. The part before all of that. The years of paying attention when nobody was watching, of understanding systems deeply enough that when those systems made an error in your favor, you recognized it immediately. Most people who get handed a 40-page trust document would not read subsection 4. Most people who are walking away from a painful marriage are not thinking about beneficiary clauses. And most people, if they are being honest, would not have had the steadiness to sign those papers quietly, walk out without showing their hand, and wait for the law to do its work. Here is what I want you to think about, and I genuinely mean this as a question worth sitting with. If you had spent years building knowledge inside something you cared about deeply, and then someone tried to cut you out of it completely, would you have had the patience to wait, to read, to trust the process rather than fight in the open? Because there is a difference between the kind of fight that feels satisfying and the kind that actually wins. Elena knew the difference. That is maybe the most human part of this entire story. If this one stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear that being underestimated is not the same as being powerless. Not everyone who is quiet is lost. Some of them are just reading subsection 4. And drop a comment below. I want to know what you think Elena's first move was the moment she found that clause. Did she feel triumph? Relief? Something else? Tell me what you think was going through her mind in that exact moment, because I have a feeling your answer says something true about you too. The pen barely touched the paper, but she had already won.